Welcome to the Live Well, Perform Better podcast. My name is David Duggan and I'm the director of Below the Line, an Irish-based consultancy specialising in helping people, teams and organisations raise their levels of consciousness, inner potential and performance. I am part of a team made up of experts from the worlds of business, elite sport, adventure and health and well-being. We are coaches, mentors and advisors to some of the world's biggest companies and organisations, as well as smaller businesses, entrepreneurs and people looking to make their mark in the world. Our guiding mantra at Below the Line is live well, perform better. What does that mean, you might ask? Good question. Maybe the easiest way to describe it from our perspective is finding the formula that works for you when it comes to things like looking after your physical and mental health, running your business, developing your career, leading your people, or simply being able to show up as brilliantly as possible into your own life, both for yourself and those around you. That's why each week I sit down with a member of our team or an invited guest for a conversation that focuses on the question, what do the words live well, perform better mean to you? This question is a way into exploring with people from a range of different backgrounds, industries and disciplines. What are the practices, techniques, habits or ideas that they use to help them to show up and be at their best in all areas of their lives? Whether that's as CEOs, leaders or managers, or as parents, family members or friends. We keep it short and sweet so that you can extract all the good stuff and get on with the rest of your day and hopefully put some of our knowledge, experience and expertise into play for yourself. This week I'm delighted to be joined by another very special guest, Kealan Lennon. Kealan is the CEO and founder of CleverCards, one of the fastest growing FinTech businesses in Ireland. And in this conversation, he spoke to me about the early experiences that shaped his career and the inspiration behind the CleverCards business, the challenges of growth and attracting investment, the power of having a simple and compelling business vision, as well as what it's like to be an attendee at the World Economic Forum at Davos. A must listen for any would-be entrepreneur, business owner or leader. This was a great conversation with a highly motivated and passionate person who has a laser-like focus on where he is going and the heights he aims to take his business to. You can subscribe at www.belowtheline.ie, where you can stay up to date with our podcast as well as our exclusive online events and sessions, including our Press Pause coaching community. Thanks for listening, and now on with the show. Saying, Kealan, thanks very much for being here and joining me. I know how busy you are. I follow you on LinkedIn, so you're in some different part of the world every time a post comes up on my feed. But I suppose maybe I'll start with the traditional question that we ask here on the podcast, which is, please tell me, why do you do what you do? That's usually a good way for us to find out a little bit about you and get a bit more of an insight into your background and your story, etc.
Sure, thanks, David. So, I'm firmly in Ireland at the moment today. So that's your first question. But look, why do I do and what I do? I suppose you could characterize what I do in a business sense in the context of what we have here as entrepreneurial. I started quite young. I'm a chartered accountant, early on, I went out on my own. I did an institutional buyout when I was very young. Sold it for quite a handsome sum when I was kind of in 30 years of age, and that gave me the bite basically to do it again. I did join the board of directors of a very large company, which was who I exited out to, and I headed M&A and corporate development for that for a while, and it was extremely interesting, albeit in a big corporate environment. And I realized, this was more about, I won't call it invention, but solving problems. And, you always have that kind of problem solving type mentality. And, I suppose if you look at CleverCards, I look back at, Steve Jobs when he said he was going to put 1,000 songs in your phone rather than on a plastic CD, or Netflix said, we're going to, build a digital platform for movies. And, they were historically circular pieces of plastic that were called DVDs or CDs in the old days, until two of those businesses built digital platforms for music and movies, respectively. In the case of paper, in case of payment, I should say, we've got rectangular pieces of plastic going around the world that we call debit and credit cards onto CleverCards, and built a digital platform for payments. And that's really what it was about. So, it's an entrepreneurial story. We're solving a big problem out there. gets more exciting by the day, gets bigger by the day. And, that's essentially what we do. So CleverCards is really about employers giving cards to their employees, and they're digital only. And it's a digital payments platform is what CleverCards is about. We enable anyone, anywhere, anytime, to pay, which is easy enough, or to be paid instantly. That's where the difference comes in. Using digital Apple and Google Pay enabled MasterCards that are accepted anywhere in the world, in store using Apple or Google Pay contactless or online.
Fantastic. And I'll ask you more about that in a second, because I have had a little insight into your business from having heard you speak a little while ago. But just, you mentioned there, you used that word, the bite, leading a buyout at 30 years of age. And it seems to be, or what I'm struck by you is, it is about that. It's solving problems. The entrepreneurial kind of bug is something that is deep within you. Would you say that that's true or not?
Yeah, I think, look, I did the buyout actually. There's even a quick step before the buyout. When I was 23, I helped the founder of that company sell the business. And that was a very successful outcome. And I then went in as finance director of that company when I was 23. And I was 25 when I did the buyout. So, it's only now when I look back, I go, gosh, that was young. And I was very, very determined. And I think the bug was there in terms of creating value, and in solving problems. And, I think there's other, you mentioned at the outset of the call about coaching and behaviors and disciplines. And, I've spent a lot of time with our leadership team talking about these things and making sure I get the right people around me. And you kind of, maybe it takes you, a number of decades to get through this and appreciate it a bit better as to what does drive people. And, if I look back to, and I know it's very cliched, but, my first job was delivering papers, and, I kind of felt, well, I wasn't going to do that for the rest of my life. And but it does bring in, resilience, and, particularly in an entrepreneurial world, resilience is one very, very big attribute that you just have to have. Anyone that thinks it's just going to be plain sailing, it doesn't happen. That's whether it's a sporting career or a business career. You're not going to just suddenly rock up and, win the All Ireland, in an athletics competition or otherwise. You're going to have lots of losses and lots of wins. So yeah, I think that bite has been there all right,
Yeah, absolutely. The story of CleverCards itself was, again, as I understand it, it started out as literally a cards business, a greeting cards business. Is that the case? And there was this kind of big pivot as you just went along that journey.
Yeah, so look, I exactly that. I started out as a greeting card business, and it was very much integrated with Facebook, and that all changed. But I think the big inspirational point for me was about 4 years ago. I was in China, and when it comes to payments, and I was quite ignorant, to be quite honest with you, David. And I think a lot of people I speak to are quite ignorant of China. We know a hell of a lot more about the West than we do about the East. We see it on our news every day, et cetera, et cetera. And I was ignorant. And, over there, not many people have even heard of Visa or MasterCard. I was going, what? And everybody was paying with a mobile phone, like everybody. And that's 4 or 5 years ago. And, when you look at the world of payments, which is a subcategory of financial services, it goes from east to west, because, Middle East is a lot more tech savvy. And as you come into Europe, and by the time you get over to west to the States, they're still cutting paper checks. They're, printing out Visa receipts and MasterCard receipts to sign and all that kind of stuff, etc. So it was pretty obvious what was going to happen in terms of what was going to happen in terms of the trend, but it just needed somebody to enable it to happen. So, CleverCards is all about enabling businesses. We didn't go and do what all the neobanks did. Everybody chased after the consumer side of life, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to be the party that does it for businesses. So literally, CleverCards enables businesses to do instant payouts with configured, customized MasterCards to their employees, and it's really about distribution via the company network is how we get every employee in the company using CleverCards. And it's a 100% market share when we go in there. And there's, as there's neobanks that don't have 100% market share. They might have 20 or 30% market share, and big incumbents might have, if there's a country like Ireland, there might only be two of them, and if it's other countries, there's more. So it's been a very interesting journey.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned MasterCard as well, and again, I know I've heard you tell the story, but it is a fascinating story. For me, it struck me about, the drive you had to make sure that you got them on board, and that it worked, and that you proved yourself to them, and then you almost kind of said, look, you've got no choice here now. Could you maybe remind, or for those who haven't listened or who don't know it, actually, it's a fascinating story, if you wouldn't mind sharing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it was definitely audacious, to say the least. We didn't have billions like Stripe have to go building a payment processing platform. Okay, so trying to raise the capital to do what Stripe did wasn't going to work. So when I thought it through, I was kind of inspired over the years. When you look back at everyone's laptop, and one's faster than the next, and all the rest, etc. That's the processing and the computing power that's in, one laptop over another, and they've got smaller and they've got faster, etc. And that's down to one company, in my view, which is Intel. Intel is the processing chip that's in all of those, and that has been the key ingredient to enable, the scalability and everything else that's happened with this. So using that analogy, it suddenly dawned on me, well, if I could get MasterCard to be my Intel, and our Intel has been the Intel inside our processing platform. So, went tongue in cheek to MasterCard and said, I'd like to integrate MasterCard into CleverCards. I was thinking CleverCards into MasterCard. Look, I felt there was a half a chance, but that was probably naive, because no way was that going to happen. And then we brought MasterCard to a meeting with a customer, and I pitched the customer based on the capability that I could bring if I had MasterCard inside. I think MasterCard could see the reaction from the customer. And, MasterCard is a very, very smart organization, and they know that the future is digital. They know that, the only place today that you can get a MasterCard really is from a bank. And the only place years ago you could get, a DVD was from the branch network called Blockbusters. And the only place you could get a CD was from the HMVs of this world. And, and they know that's going to change, and it's going to be, who is the new Netflix and who is the new Spotify when it comes to payments. So they're very shrewd in terms of knowing that, digitalization is the way that it's going. And that really starts the ball going when it's okay. And, many years later, we got to the point where we were able to integrate that into us. So now I won't say game on Stripe, but, we've got the same power built into our platform, which is just the processing component. And there's other sides of it as well. In terms of being able to issue cards and all the applications and everything else that go with it. So it's a full stack platform that enables businesses to issue cards, pretty much anywhere I was going to say anywhere in the world, but predominantly around Europe is where we're operating at the moment. Businesses can open a company account with CleverCards, and they simply email their employees or their contractors or their customers a digital MasterCard. It's as simple as that. And there's two MasterCards if it's an employee benefit. There's a set amount loaded onto the card, and it's used just like a Revolut. It's an employee card. And if it's a business card, the business just issues an unlimited number of CleverCards, digital MasterCards, and it's the business manager sets the credit limit and the expiry date of each of those cards, and can see the transaction in real time as the business card is spent. So look, it's a very, very simple solution.
You mentioned earlier about understanding other people's needs, and you've a growing team, and it's growing all the time. So what are one of the challenges, or what do you think are some of the key challenges you're facing in just growing your business at the moment?
Well, I've spent a lot of time trying to get the best team, and I know it's very cliched, but it's you're involved in coaching and you get this, and you can get. If you're going to win the Premiership, you need to hire the 11 best players, okay, on the pitch. I mean, that's just what you need to do. But it's not just hiring the 11 best players. If I wanted to win the Olympics rowing, I could absolutely go into each country and pick 6 great rowers or 8 great rowers, whatever number is on a boat. Let's call it 8. But if I just dump them into a boat and say off you go, I'll guarantee you the person at the front is rowing quicker than the person behind them, and the person in the middle is going a little bit left, and the person on the right, and I'd say that boat wouldn't be long before it's doing circles, okay? So it's not just about getting the right players onto the pitch, and it's about making sure that everybody is pointed and aligned in the right direction, and making sure that everybody has got crystal clear, we call it smart objectives, as you know. It's specific and measurable and achievable, relevant and timeline, OKRs that we have. So everyone is crystal clear, you know, where we want to get the boat to. And then everybody is rowing in sync. And so everybody's rowing in sync at the right pace. You know, slightly faster pace than slower pace, as you can imagine, in the business of the pace that we move. You know, it's putting all of that, you know, it's empowering and trusting those, you know, remarkable leaders that are in the company. They're the ones that are running each of the disciplines, you know. So, you know, I do value how fortunate I have been to get an extraordinary team together. You know, and you know, my job is really just to conduct the orchestra, or you know, be the person that sets the pace and sets the direction and alignment. And you know, you've in an early stage business, as you know, like this, when we've had some massive wins, and it's you know, it's hugely encouraging for the team, you know, in terms of what we're developing and what we're doing. And so I think the team is one thing. You know, we're going to be raising capital now. Is the other thing that typically, you know, as a CEO of a business, you're always focused to make sure you have the appropriate amount of capital for the appropriate amount of time. And that's been very interesting for us as well at the moment, David, because I think, you know, there was a bull market there for a number of years with zero interest rates and everything. And, you know, a lot of technology companies lost their way. And, you know, they were, you know, raising 200 million at a 2 billion valuation. They were never worth 2 billion in the first place. And now they've, more to the point, they've burned through 180 million of the 200 million they're now restructuring, you know. So CleverCards didn't do that. We were very astute in terms of our, you know, the amount of capital that we deployed. We were very, very careful with, and sometimes that means you move a little bit slower. I was thinking of spray and pray, and you know, every single order is profitable. So it's you know, so I think we're in a good place. You know, the best startup investments of the last decade were made, by the way, between 2008 and 2011. You know, Uber, Airbnb, WhatsApp, Instagram. So it's actually a great time to be investing now. This is the time to invest, because this is a time when you know, I think this year, next year, when you know, as I say, invest low and sell high, and that's kind of where we think it's at. So yeah, capital is always one of the things that you need to get right in terms of the challenges faced the business. So yeah.
And just going back again to your team and the business, you mentioned you know, this idea of being the equivalent of a Spotify or a Netflix, but that seems to me a very simple, and we know simple isn't easy, but it's a simple, direct and easy idea for lots of people in your organization to kind of get behind and get around. Would you agree in terms of, you know, bringing people with you, creating that direction, creating that alignment and momentum, etc.?
Yeah, so I think, look, you know, people talk about the North Star and everything else, and we you know, we do use the analogy of Netflix in terms of kind of ultimately where we want to get to, okay, within the payment space, or Spotify. So it's one that you can, there's similarities with, you know, it's the removal of plastic. And, you know, we get it even as we talk to customers, to be honest with you, David, we get it that, you know, lots of customers will say to us, look, you know, maybe some of our team might prefer plastic, and, you know, you know, our argument to that is, and, you know, maybe they may not be tech savvy, and they mightn't be able to put digital cards on their phone, and, you know, and we usually have a number of answers to that, which is, well, you know, when COVID happened, David, and you couldn't get into a pub or a restaurant, I said, you know, by Jesus, everyone worked out then how to get a digital COVID cert into their phone. Or as Michael O'Leary, when Michael O'Leary said, look, there's no problem printing out a boarding card, it'll only cost you €60. They soon figured out how to put a digital boarding card in the phone. So it's actually simple. So CleverCards took the approach that we need to be the responsible ones to take the lead and say, I'm sorry, we're not doing plastic. If you're not interested, fine. You know, but honestly, we would encourage you, because once people go digital, they don't go back again. It's just, you just don't need plastic. So I think in terms of a digital strategy, that's the team have got right behind us on that.
You mentioned again a word you used earlier, being the conductor. So I'm just wondering, I'm curious to know, what do you as the conductor do to try and keep yourself at your best at the moment? Are there habits, practices, things that you do daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it might be, to keep you on top of your brief as much as you can?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting question, and I've never actually been asked that question before, David, because and I've never really discussed it. But there is three things that I do, and it's probably about 5 years ago, I'd say. It's pressurizing in a startup, in an early stage business. So you absolutely need perseverance and resilience and all those things, and you need to be on top of your game. Like, you need to be well oiled, okay? And it kind of just dawned on me one day. I said, Jesus, like, I need to be on top of my game here. And what I did was I hired a personal trainer. And so I've got a personal trainer that comes in at 6:30 every morning. And to be honest with you, if he didn't come, I wouldn't do it. So maybe that's a sign of weakness, but it's bloody hard to do it if you haven't got someone, getting you down on your hands and knees to do 40 press-ups. And so he comes in, and usually his first question is, what sleep did I get? So I've got alarms on my phone to make sure that I get enough sleep. So he kind of dictates what he'll do with me depending on what sleep I've had the night before. And he's also a nutritionist. So, he's very, very careful in terms of, exactly what my intake is of carbs, protein, the amount of vitamins that I have and everything else in the course of the day, and what my diet is like. So I do concentrate on making sure that I get appropriate sleep. And look, yourself, if you're knackered, you're just a bit sluggish, and I can't be sluggish. And so I on a daily basis, that's what I do. It certainly has helped. Whatever about the, physically feeling a bit better, mentally, as we all know, you can have a day where you're just a bit browned off, or this, that, or the other, or you have a day where you're tired, or, it's a bit dull, and honestly, when you physically train, I was completely shocked about mentally how crystal clear you can be in your thinking, making rational decisions. All those things come with it, and certainly it's been a life changer for me, in terms of, it kind of felt right, get yourself to be in a situation here where you're on top of your game physically, mentally, and then you can go at 200 miles an hour on that rowboat, and hopefully the people that you have behind you are all steering at all pedaling at the same pace as well, and so that's what I do. Yeah.
Wow, great answer. Thank you very much. I have two more questions to ask you before I let you go. I'd love to know what Davos is like. I saw you on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. What's that experience like? I have no sense of what it must be like. It must be amazing.
Yeah, it was. Look, it was very privileged to be there, and it's a very, very interesting forum. The founder of Davos wanted literally world leaders there with without the entourage of assistants and everything else between them. So yes, I was privileged to be standing in a group with the former chief executive of Bank of Ireland, Francesca, and the founder of Cantor Fitzgerald, and Michael Dell, and the CEO of Hewlett Packard, and the Minister for Finance in Ireland, and the Taoiseach. And when you're having that kind of a conversation, there's genuinely people there that at that level they do want to improve things. I mean, I was there and I heard the genuineness of it. They want to, you hear that type of language. This is now side chats over a coffee kind of a thing, but they're going, we need to fix this. And with a genuineness, look, we can, and I know somebody and I can this, that, and the other. So I think it's a good example of where business and government comes together. And in our own world, in terms of social and financial inclusion, I mean, the British government went to MasterCard about doing payouts to citizens. So, as businesses give out cards to employees, the same as government giving out cards to citizens. And, we've issued a card in the United Kingdom. It's a digital MasterCard. In that instance, it's restricted to about 26 utility providers. So it'll work in 26 utilities only. It won't work elsewhere. And but there's what that does is it enables those subsidies, enable those people to pay their electricity bills online. And you might say, well, that's not a big deal. It is a big deal if someone had to go out in the pissing of rain and and go down and go into an electricity shop and pay it. I mean, that's not right, not in the world we live in. And everyone should be able to get a MasterCard. You shouldn't have the situation that somebody can't get a bank account or somebody can't get, it's not right, so I think there was things like that where, it was great to be in a room and to be able to show somebody something and say, yeah, like, what do you need? Why do you get a plastic card in the post with instructions as to how to put it into your phone and instructions about how to activate the pin and this? And it's all nonsense. You just don't need digital. It's improved. You don't need plastic, I should say. Get rid of it. So I think an awareness level was great for CleverCards to be in those circles with those leaders, and it was certainly a unique experience in terms of some things that I've had.
Yeah, fantastic. And then lastly, just before we wrap up, just you mentioned funding, and you're in a funding stage or around at this stage, or you're going into. But what's on the horizon for CleverCards in 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, so look, we've since we launched the platform, it's been a bit of a rocket ship, David. Right? So last year we're up 50x in our sales. Yeah, I mean, it's between Q4 and Q3. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. We opened up 100,000 new accounts in last year. I think that's more than the main two Irish banks combined, and nearly half of those were in about 12 weeks. So it's it's more than Revolut-like trajectory, I suppose, in one quarter in that context. So you can imagine what we're poised to do over the next 3 years. We've a presence in Ireland, UK, and Italy at the moment. We'll probably move into Spain this year, and we've had sizable buy-in from a lot of the national banks, which is great. They've been using CleverCards, so it's quite ironic that all the staff are using CleverCards, so it's quite complementary. And banks and corporates, then once the staff are using the cards, then they're embracing it to use it for their customers. So our plans are get the company as big as we can get it, and we'll see what the future holds. As I said, kind of next kind of phase in the evolution is further capital investment to kind of accelerate that. We'll see where we go down the road, and we're very differentiated to anybody else that's out there. So I think we've got a phenomenal infrastructure and a phenomenal plan in terms of where we want to bring it, and that's really what 2023 is going to hold for us, and we've got more stuff up our sleeve that we'll do in 2024.
Fantastic. Well, it's a phenomenal business success story. It's a phenomenal Irish story, and I feel really lucky and privileged to have got to hear it straight from the horse's mouth today. So, Kealan, thanks a million for giving me your time and being here. It's you're very kind to do so, and it's going to be a great listen for anyone tuning in. Thanks a million.
Not at all.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's conversation. We hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard and you want to stay in touch with us, then please head over to www.belowtheline.ie to subscribe to our mailing list and to explore our upcoming programs and events. Until then, take care and see you next time.